The hour hand was close to 1 o'clock, and Sanderson was still working on his latest story. His reading lamp was the only light burning in the lonely house, and the shadows clustered in the corners of the library, waiting for their chance to be rulers of the night. Something had happened to Sanderson's power of imagination. In the past, it had never been too difficult to describe his characters, regardless of their position in the plot. He now found himself unable to describe the man who has to be the central figure of his tale, a man of cruel and wanton needs, black of soul and hard of heart, a man of unnatural and sadistic desires, capable of a multitude of evils. But the appearance and build of this man still lured him, and his features seemed only a blur in the mind's eye of the writer. It might be because he had written so many stories of a similar nature that his mind was unable to produce an original description, and he found himself facing a blank wall. Always his stories had been grotesque and weird, woven around men and women possessing strange and terrible qualities. Sanderson was confronted with a frenzied thought. Perhaps he had lost the knack of twisting words and phrases that the reader would get a clear picture of the characters described. If such a thing had happened, he would have to find some way to help him restore that faculty. He paced to the window and looked out into the night, watching the rain patter gently on the ground outside. Seeking for an inspiration, the darkness yielded nothing, and only seemed to mock him as he strained for a suitable picture of the man he was trying to visualize. The smoke from his cigarette on the ashtray drifted idly into a corner and formed into a billowy cloud. As he stared at it, he suddenly thought that here was a way to reach his goal. If he could imagine that his character was sitting there, hidden by the smoke, perhaps he could materialize a picture of him from the mist, as one imagines visions and palaces in the clouds on a windy day. Sanderson seated himself in his chair and peered into the blue billows. A ragged wisp of smoke, jutting out from the thick mist, could be his hair, unkempt and entangled, like that of a madman. One section was dividing from the rest in a long angular streamer to the right, forming an imaginary arm, and he could almost make out two indistinct legs at the foot, with another arm making itself manifest on the other side. But his attempts at conjuring a face and body from the vapors were difficult. In vain, he concentrated on the upper portion of the fog in an attempt to create in his imagination the lines and expressions of a countenance. Suddenly, success began to reward his efforts. He could barely discern a pair of eyes, wild and inflamed, staring from the mist, while whirls of smoke eddied around them. Wider and wider until a long, evil nose was revealed. The face was beginning to disclose itself more clearly when he became aware that the body had taken a definite form, long and lean with a sinuous strength that reminded Sanderson of a great cat. It sat in the chair in a tense forward position, as if ready to spring. One long arm hung at its side, while the other gripped the back of the chair for support. Sanderson's delighted gaze returned to the face, clear and evil, now stood out, the mouth vicious and hard, leering at him with diabolical cunning. Sharp, deep lines ran up from the corners of its mouth. Similar lines creased the uncouth forehead into a permanent scowl. The bulging eyes still stared crazily. The vision was perfect, and the writer closed his eyes for a moment, freezing sentences of description and feeling a strange surge of confidence flow through him. His character was perfect in every detail, and now he could go ahead on his story with a new confidence in his powers of imagination. He opened his eyes to find that the vision had not left. It sat there in the corner, clearer than ever, and it seemed to him that the mouth was working in a grimace of hate. A wave of fear swept through Sanderson, and he wondered if his mind had deserted him. The figure was now rising, eddies of smoke still clinging to it, An evil vitality made itself manifest to the rider, for it was now striding toward him with quick and cat-like movements. It all happened so quickly that Sanderson was unable to get out of his chair before the thing was on him. The long claw-like hands reached for his throat, and the air was instantly cut off. He made a frantic, futile struggle to loosen that relentless grasp. And all the time, those mad eyes stared mercilessly into his own. The last thing that Sanderson sensed before pain-pierced blackness enveloped him was the faint odor of his cigarette, still burning in the ashtray.